Southeast LA is where it's at. Let's continually hold elected officials in our positions accountable. Never forget, we work for the community. We work for you. You gave us this position. You could get rid of us. If you tell me, Jorgel, ya me cansaste, I don't want to hear from you. I don't like you. I don't like what you did here, right? Totally understandable. But let's continually just heading the right direction. Let's continue to be positive. And I encourage other folks to run too.
Press the button to begin.
You're listening to The Social Primate with your host, Eddie Aguirre. And today we have the one and only Jorgel Chavez. Dude, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's exciting.
Thank you, man. No, I do appreciate everything. Honestly, so far, I've been able to see your work on the ground over the last summer or so with the protests that were happening in Southeast LA, whether it was in Bell Gardens, Maywood, etc. I was able to witness you on the ground at the Bell Gardens one of those nights. And I think most recently, I saw you at Placita Alvera maybe a couple of weeks ago when they were walking from the church basically to the detention center.
Yes.
So, dude, man, you've been doing the work. I know you're currently a council member for the city of Bell Gardens. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, no, well, thank you so much for the opportunity. Huge fan of your work. I've been following you for a couple of years already, man. And congratulations on this incredible project, right? I've seen the guests that you had and really deep down, all about Southeast, Sela, all the way. So really, it's an honor for me to be on this platform, and I really appreciate you bringing me into this space. So it means a lot.
Hey, no, for sure, man. And you know what? I want to just make a note of that because, I grew up in Southeast LA. I've been there since like 98 or something. And over the last couple of decades, it's been known for its corruption and scandals, right?
Yeah.
So when I see somebody that's on the ground fighting for and with the people, and it's from the hood, like it just opens up this curiosity to me that I want to know what led you into this work. What were the initial moments that you decided that you needed to step into these roles, knowing this history of corruption?
Yeah, no, I mean, it really just goes back to my upbringing, bro. I mean, growing up in BG, Bell Gardens, I've had the pleasure of not only living in Bell Gardens, but living in other cities across Sela. So I remember my fondest memories living on Marabrisa Street in Huntington Park, right? And that was like maybe my first couple of years of life. And then from there going to Linwood, went to Roosevelt Elementary School. And then from there going from Linwood to Bell Gardens. And then kind of being in Bell Gardens pretty much the rest of my life. There was a portion where I ended up going to Mexico, lived in Michoacan for like a year, and then came back, lived in Bell. And then we moved to where we currently live right now with my parents, and it's Bell Gardens, right? And on Gotham Street. So, saw a lot of things growing up, read about Sela growing up, didn't really know a lot about the history, didn't know a lot about just not seeing. I always heard about LA all the time, heard a lot about the bad things that Southeast Los Angeles was going through. The first thing I think about is the Bell scandal, right? Early 2010s. And, for me, it was like, well, what else is happening, right? Why aren't there good things coming out of Sela? I remember it was in high school where I had written a persuasive essay. And, you do your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. And my teacher at the time, Ms. Villalobos at Bell Gardens High School, tells me I was a freshman. She's like, you'd be really great for this organization, this club called JSA, Junior State of America. And I was at first like, well, what is this? Like, what's going on? And it was my freshman year. So keep in mind, you're a freshman. I was like 14 years old. I didn't really know a lot. And, it was basically like a debate club. And you got to go to college campuses and you got to debate with other students. And that was sort of my first ever experience going from being in a school, it was 99% Latino, to being like one out of like barely any. Right. And every time I had to tell people like, oh, when you introduce yourself to other folks, it was like I had to dress up in a suit. And I used to go to compete with students from like Irvine and compete with students from like the West Side or Santa Barbara and stuff. And, it was that, I think, at that moment where I said like, no, I gotta be a spokesperson for my community, for my people. Right. Instead of saying like, oh, when I would say I'm from Bell Gardens, they're like, where is that? And I'm like, where Downey is? Right next door, And now I just say, we're right next to Downey, but we're better because Downey goes down. Nah, I always joke around
those
that.
Downey people right now.
Hey, but I love my Downey folks too, Even though they can't claim Cela.
Yeah.
Want to make that clear. Pero yeah, that was sort of my first realization of like going from, that feeling that culture shock, going to USC, going to UCLA campuses, did a Stanford program through that. I remember I had to fundraise, sell what do you call those chocolates? The world's finest chocolates. Yeah, man. I used
to raise the money, right?
Yeah, stood outside of the Food for Less right there on Eastern and Florence, and at the time it was like a buck, or like a buck for and they were bigger ones too. Now it's all, it's shrinkflation. 4 pieces, yeah. Pero that was sort of the beginning, and then after that I remember like organizing with East Yards, East Yards Community for Environmental Justice, like a sophomore junior year. I remember I was a commissioner in the city of Bell Gardens. I was like 16 years old at the time. And I remember there was like an issue because they said, well, how can you be on a commission if you can't vote because you're not 18, right? At the end of the day, the commission is advisory at the end of the day, right? So that was an experience. I remember we used to bike it with East Yards Community for Environmental Justice all the way to like the Gateway Council of Government meetings. And we talk about, the COG at the time was looking into consideration of expanding the 710 freeway, right? And we were all about Community Alternative 7, and this was like 2014, 2013, I remember, and to organizing right there in the space, community space room on Washington, man. I mean, it was those were the days, that was like sort of my upbringing. And I remember going to USC, coming back, and I had to do a project on the contaminated site that is now a swap meet, which is the open air market right there on Garfield and Gage, which is border BG, but it's in Commerce, but then it's owned by Montebello Unified. So just, and if you still go today, probably now 10 years later since the school's been closed, it's a swap meet that's a thriving swap meet, but at the same time, like, it's all contaminated.
Damn.
Right?
You know what? That's crazy. I was not aware of that, and I frequent that swap meet every week, if anything, with the suegra or my mom. Dude.
Yeah. So, what's being done? Why has nothing been done? If anything's been done, who owns it? Right? Those are all the questions. And then when it comes down to a list of priorities of different projects that each of us is working on, every city or every jurisdiction, where does it land, right? And every 2 years you got transition because folks come in, folks change, they don't win. Yeah. Whatever the agenda, the priority was, it changes.
Now, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding between what people think you do and what you can do? And like, how have you faced that?
Honestly, it just comes down to communication, being transparent, openly engaging with the community. I think something I take very prideful is not forgetting where I'm coming from, where I came from, right? Where I still be learning, right? I'm like a sponge. I'm still absorbing information. I'm making connections still, and try to be there as much as I can with the community. Everybody from the business owners to the residents, even to my day job, man, just kind of learning and knowing and know that I don't have all the answers, right? So I think for me, I remember back in like 2020 when I ran for city council the first time, it was, it was a grassroots movement. It was during COVID. So we had not only the face mask, but you also had the face shield. And, I had raised a total of like $6,000. And, half of it was like, contributed through like donations through my mom helping me out, pay for it because I didn't have like a credit card. Like I remember that. So, it was $6,000 and used my skateboard and knocked on every door I could. Right. At the time, it was tough, man, because, I was going up against 4 other candidates who, 2 of them had been in council for a while. One of them had been in council for 21 years. The other one had been in council for 17 years. And I was 23 at the time. And I was still a student at USC. And I was still undergrad. And, it really just varied depending on who the voter was. Like sometimes they'd say like they were excited to see a young person come and knock on the door and see that fresh energy. But at the same time, they were, well, what experience do you have? Right? What can you offer? Right? What are you going to do for me? Right? So for me, it was always about ensuring like, even on my mailer, that one mailer I could afford that I sent out, it said like, call me. Here's my cell phone. Right? And folks at the end like would pick up the phone and they'd be like, oh, well, I didn't really think it was going to be you. But like now it's, until to this day, like it's the same number, it's all over my, you go on the website, you can find it. My business card, they have it. I always try to be as accessible as I can because I think that's the first thing, right? Can you pick up your phone and call your elected representative and tell them like whatever the issue is, right? It's our responsibility to listen to you because at the end of the day, like y'all have the power. You put us in this position and you could always get rid of us. You could switch us. You could, I'm here to serve you. That's my understanding of it.
Yeah. And you made some great points because, going back a little bit into my background, I remember the specific time I was 15 or 16 years old. There was these individuals campaigning and going door to door knocking. And I remember my dad just kind of crashing out on them. They're like, get out of my house. Like, I'm not going to vote for you. You know, very disillusioned. And again, I think that skepticism is within a lot of the community members a lot of the time, especially growing up with that history that we mentioned earlier with the corruption and scandal. So it gets to the point where you need to gain that trust from somebody, you know, putting yourself out there, again, making yourself accessible and again, transparent in what you're trying to do. That speaks volumes. And although they're going to be skeptical, once they communicate with you, once they see who you really are, then they can start gaining that trust, feeling that there's actual value in their voice, right?
Exactly.
Now, a couple months ago, we're going back to the summer of 2025 now, we can call it.
Yeah. 2025,
There was a few statements that were issued from Bell Gardens. I think some of it was the Freedom of Information Act, or you guys were doing like some sort of request. Like, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was an interesting council meeting. I remember we did it as a special council meeting. It was a sort of host of reaction that we needed to do. It was right after when this whole thing had just began, man. This ICE terrorization, which continually happens day to day, right? And I know Memo consistently documents it from LA Taco, and you know, shout out to them for the incredible work that they've done and really keeping the community up to date. You know, I'd say it was a list of requests. I'm trying to remember from the top of my head, but one of them was a FOIA to kind of get information of the folks that had been taken, right? How many of the folks from that were Bell Gardens residents, where are they to this day, right? What information can they provide? Basically, it's similar to a California Public Records request, but at the federal level. So that was a big one, and trying to determine, like, you know, we're hearing about what's happening. We've obviously seen these kidnappings happening in our community. You know, are these residents or are they folks that are waiting for the bus, right? Trying to get to their job, you know, going to do some laundry, whatever the case is. So to this day, we still haven't gotten any information.
Damn.
To this day, we haven't gotten any information. I haven't received any information, and it's very frustrating. It's frustrating because the community looks at me for answers, and as much as I try to keep folks up to date or share or provide updates, you know, I myself, there's only so much, and the last thing I want is to kind of give false hope, right? I've always let folks know, especially during this time, is, you know, I'm going to be out there. You know, I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that my voice is their representative, because I know that when I'm speaking, I'm not only speaking for myself, I'm speaking up for the community and for those that can't speak up, right? Not for fear or whatever the case is. So I think a big part of it is showing up, documenting, right? Because there's going to be a point where, you know, Trump is going to be out of office, and hopefully things go back to a more of a normality, or we learn from this experience, right? And I don't want to say go back to normal, but we can get things better, right? Let's get things in a better direction, and let's learn from this, and let's make sure that when we open our history books in the future, let's actually document what's actually happening,
right?
Yeah,
you know, and as a community member, like I obviously have a lot of questions, right? And I had my share of council city meetings that I showed up to in different parts of Cell, just to kind of get an idea of what specific cities were, or city officials were trying to do, right? I had the opportunity to go to one of the HP ones where I think they were deciding on the ordinance that they ended up passing. And I also went to Bell, and I was a little disappointed in what I heard from the members at the city council in Bell. But my biggest question was ultimately, how much local power does a community have? And on top of that, like, how much responsibility do these community members or community leaders have when it comes down to protecting the community, and how much can they do, right? Because at the end of the day, it's still federal. You gotta follow federal rules, right? So how do you navigate through that?
It's a very complex issue, and I can give you the council sort of direct answer, where obviously our cities, right, we rely on legal counsel, right? We have our in the case, for example, in our city, we have a legal counsel that is a third party that we contract with. In the city of LA, you have the city attorney, right? The county district attorney. So we have some legal assessment. We have advice that we seek. And it's up to them to sort of advise us, right? We ultimately have the final decision, right? And it's a very difficult position, because you always try to make sure that you're looking after not only your residents or your stakeholders within the community, but I'm also thinking of the future, right? The long term, the family, the kids, even those things that I don't necessarily have jurisdiction over, like the school district, right? Because this is impacting the schools, right? Parents aren't taking their kids to school because of fear, right? Which is then causing, low turnout. It's causing low attendance, right? And folks are saying, oh, we have, turns out we don't need an after school program because there isn't enough students attending, right? So for me, it's when folks have been saying like, oh, well, you can just, tell them to get out or kick them out or ban them or tell your police to start enforcing and, start citing them and writing them up. Every time the city, and here specifically in California, because we're consistently checking and documenting what other cities are doing, there's a risk that's involved with lawsuits, with the federal government coming in and saying, oh, so the federal law, federal oversight overrules whatever state or city or county is going to do.
Yeah.
Now, there are how do I say, there are tools in our toolbox that we can use, right? I'm thinking like Senator Weiner's bill to unmask, law enforcement, right? I'm thinking County of LA now doing the same thing with a county-wide ordinance where they're also gonna do the same thing, not allow officers or federal officers to have masks, right? Now the question is, are the federal agents gonna follow it? Right? And if they don't, are there consequences? Right? And then who's actually gonna like enforce those laws, right? So we could pass all the laws all day, every day, but if it's not gonna be enforced, what's the purpose? And again, the last thing I want is to do more damage to my community.
Of course.
Because at the end of the day, this is hurting families, it's hurting children, it's hurting, the rest of the folks. So it's a very complex issue. I try to make sure I'm up to date as much as I can. We consistently have conversations with our lawyers. We took initiative as a city to join the case along with Chirla Public Counsel. I'm trying to remember the case. I can't remember the case from the top of my head, and it's funny because we literally talked about it today. Perdomo case, I think that's what it was called. Yeah. And we joined that as a city. Other cities joined: Monterey Park, Pico Rivera, Paramount, West Hollywood, Culver City, Santa Monica, City of LA, County of LA, City of Santa Ana. A whole host of our cities joined this lawsuit, right? And, we're claiming damages. We're claiming, where you don't know what happened to our residents. So this was a big one. It was probably one of the biggest things that we had to go through in this last year, right? And it's not easy, especially when consistently we're sort of put at, I don't want to say put at odds, but when we don't know what could come after. Like we're an uncharted territory. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it is Vasquez Perdomo versus
Perdomo.
Yeah,
that's the case.
And just to brief that up for people, it's a lawsuit challenging federal immigration enforcement tactics in Southern California, alleging racial profiling and suspicionless stops and denial of due process, being some of those factors. My thing is like, at what point or is there ever going to be a moment where the will of the people outweighs federal overreach? Because I feel like at some point, if something doesn't value the area where you're coming from, then you have a choice, or you should have the choice to change it because you know your community, right? But at the end of the day, if you got the federal government coming at you or coming down, bringing down your neck, at what point do we decide when those lines are being crossed? And again, I don't know if you're able to answer that in any shape or form.
How do I answer this? I'll say this, and it's unfortunate that I have to, I don't want to say pivot to this answer or try to parlay to it, because by no means do I want to say like this is the result, right? Unfortunately, elections have consequences, right? All right. Donald Trump won this last election, right? And for me, this is the way we know. We have the midterms coming up. We have a whole host of different Senate races nationwide. We have some House seats, right? Today we just found out Congressman LaMalfa passed away up in Northern California, Congressional District 1. So now, right, they were winning the House by like 3 votes, right? Our country is made up of checks and balances, and I still believe in that promise, right? That the people, we're a democracy and the people have the power, right? It's midterm season already, right? We're in January. People are going to start canvassing by March at the latest. And then June, we have primaries. depending on how you're looking at it, whether it's city, county, state, or federal elections, I mean, a lot of things can sway and change. For me, my goal is, and what I've always said is like, let's show up, right? Let's make sure we have our folks come out to the ballots, right? If we feel comfortable here in California, we got other states that we can flip over, right? Because we need that Senate, right? That's how we continually maintain checks and balances. And, you know, to your point, the will of the people, right? The will of the people is done through the ballot box, right? That's the way it's perceived, and I still believe in it, and I think that we should continually preserve that. And you know, we've seen it with the federal one. It's a little bit trickier, but I mean, if we try to emulate this back to like city or county, right? We've had a whole host of different county recalls, city recalls. I'm thinking about, I think like 2 or 3 of them in San Francisco, right? So the people have the power. It's just a matter of right now, it's very polarized. To do something where we can even begin to impeach Trump, right? The how do I say this? It'll take a mass amount of not only here in LA or here in California, but nationwide. It has to be a movement. I quickly want to parlay and take, like, we've talked about it. Where does this power come from? How can we furnish this power, right? Because right now our people are angry. We're frustrated. We want to make sure that we can show up, but we don't want to wait till November. We don't want to wait till the primaries. What can we do right here, right now, right? And I'm blessed in a position where, you know, on a day-to-day basis, you know, I'm contributing to something where we're consistently activating our base, right? May Day is approaching, right? May 1st is around the corner for us. Right, we're engaging members. We did the, you know, action. I know you mentioned that with the Placita Olvera. We did International Migrants Day, right? Consistently activating our people to ensure that we're not only waiting to those days, but what are we going to do between now and then? Right? No King's Rally. I'm thinking about that, right? Like, we have to consistently put pedal to the metal, put pressure, and keep our base active. Let's continually maintaining this energy all the way through.
Yeah, you know what? And I love that you brought that up. And it's kind of like a contrast, because I saw this interview that you had with, I believe it was News Nation last year. Yeah. And basically, like, what I got from this conversation, and not just the conversation itself, but it was the comments. And I feel like there's a big misunderstanding or disconnection between what people see happening in their neighborhoods and what people who are living in them are going through. And then, for example, just to kind of, you know, throw some comments out there. Somebody was saying, like, how exactly is this racial profiling? Illegal isn't a race. Illegal means illegal. Some other guys like, yep, more California stupidity, celebrate pride, but don't celebrate the birth of America. Like, these kind of comments, like, it goes to show, and it just proves that if these issues aren't affecting you, you're disconnected from it. Like, there's no empathy for any of this. You're just seeing it as what they're showing you. But it's us who we're seeing it happen on the ground who are understanding that this is only going to anger us and activate us further, right? And if you're seeing that from the outside, you're just looking like a crazy guy. Like, oh, they're just protesting instead of following the rules. But that's not the real thing. So I feel like there's a disconnect, and we have to find a common way to humanize ourselves. Because unfortunately, we have to humanize ourselves in these situations. Otherwise, people are going to continue thinking that we're just numbers, right?
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how have you worked around that?
I'll tell you, those comments are the bare minimum, man.
Yeah.
And believe me, you know, and some of these stations, right? I'm not gonna hide it, like Fox or News Nation, right? They have their own ways of shaping things up, and sometimes they'll throw in a question here or there, and they'll try to challenge me. But I like the challenge. That's why I like to engage on there, and again, putting forward that I'm not only there just being Jorgel. For me, this is representing Bell Gardens, representing Sela, representing, you know, our community. So, you know, I think that I remember when I got on Fox 11, and immediately after that interview went live, I had folks calling me saying that I was, you know, that I wasn't welcome, that I was illegal, that and I still have the voicemails. They were really some hurtful, like really bad, you know, telling me to go back, you know, saying that it was like somehow hurting, or, you know, that this would be like a white nation. Like it was really some really, you know, and again, I look at the comments and I'm like, okay, that's, you know, but they're really, some of them are really powerful, right? And in the sense that, you know, they hit home.
Yeah, man.
Because for me, it's like, I'm trying to represent my community. I'm doing it with good spirits, right? But you got to have thick skin, and you have to just find a way to just ignore it. I remember I was put in a front Facebook page, and it was like, "Make America Great," look at this mayor, and they had a picture of me and being like anti-patriotic and stuff, and it's like, it was a lot of that, and it's a really toxic space, and that's what I say, like, for me, as we talk about engaging, as we talk about activating our base, right, these folks are there, man, and as much as, I don't want to say that what's happening in LA isn't happening in Chicago or isn't happening in Minnesota literally right now, or in Charlotte, right, like, those instances, like if you go to other states, Arkansas, Missouri, Georgia, Texas, Florida, it's a tough place to be.
Yeah, man. And that's what's crazy, because, I mean, we are technically in a bubble. We're here in California. That's our exposure for the most part in our daily lives. And I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, because, again, like, you're doing a service for the community. With the intention in mind that you value, how do I say it?
I'll tell you something. It's not hurtful, man. It's hurtful, like, on a human level. Mm-hmm. For me, for me to go through that, which again is, I'll take it all day, every day, right? I'm in this position. I'm here to be a spokesperson for my community. I'm here to represent. And I really think if I really want to talk about what's hurtful is like the families, right? The people that I'm representing that look at that and just scroll through it or don't want to see it or are traumatized to the point where they don't want to see this stuff anymore because maybe one of their family members is going through that. Yeah. For me, that is some like, you're on another level of, for me, these are words. These are folks that, to me at this moment, it's like, you can hit me all you want, right? I don't mind it. Because at the end of the day, I don't even, these are, what do you call, keyboard warriors? Keyboard warriors or keyboard cowards. Let's call them that. They're keyboard cowards. Because folks are going to just talk smack and they're going to try to make themselves, feel some type of way. So, I'll take it all day, every day.
Yeah, no. Well, man, for reals, I'm glad you had that thick skin, because honestly, it's not easy to navigate, but I think for the most part, it's going to take conversations with everybody. And then, again, seeing where we are meeting each other on the ground in a human way. Mm-hmm. Actually, I had somebody right here on Instagram Live to say, we need to start engaging with community in Espanol. I'm not sure if you've done that in the past
before. Hay que cambiar este podcast a español. I don't know how to say podcast in Spanish. How do you say it in Spanish?
Podcast.
Así, podcasto, así nomás. No, pues... Como quieras, we will do it.
Yeah, no, and again, it's just to kind of go on that right now and just wing it. Like, es importante hacer eso porque, aunque mi español no esté bien, it's not great. I think at the end of the day, just trying to make somebody understand where you're coming from, And I've been able to witness and film and capture stories and just see different facets of this reality that we're currently living in,
Sí, no, para mí es muy importante de nuevo tener inclusividad de todos los lenguajes, especial en este momento que estamos viviendo. Es muy importante reconocer el tiempo y cómo lo vamos a mirar en la historia. Cuando hablemos de esto, igual como hablamos de la pandemia de 2020, ¿te acuerdas 2020 cuando nos traían con mascarilla y que tenías que estar a 6 pies? Todavía recuerdo yo yendo a misa cuando abrieron otra vez las iglesias y estaba cuando te dan, cuando dicen la paz y entonces you usually shake hands y de repente nomás el saludo de la mano and it was like era una experiencia diferente y hasta el momento, si yo todavía voy a misa, todavía miro muchas personas que traen su mascarilla y todo eso. So, ¿cómo lo vamos a mirar de aquí que ya estamos en 2026? Hace 6 años que ha pasado eso. Exacto. Y ahorita, ¿cómo vamos a mirar cómo vamos a escribir lo que pasó en 2025 con las redadas de inmigración? Y también lo que está pasando, como empezó el año, ¿verdad? Lo que está pasando en Venezuela, lo que está pasando, cómo lo vamos a mirar en la historia y quién va a escribir esa historia es muy importante para que los jóvenes de nuestras comunidades, no nomás de aquí del sureste de Los Ángeles, pero por todos lados, que sepan la verdad, y que digan, no, pues, ¿cuál es la verdad? ¿La que estamos viviendo o cómo lo miran ellos? Yo digo que es muy importante que sepamos la verdad por todos diferentes ángulos, ¿verdad? De una persona que está viviéndolo aquí, de aquí en Los Ángeles, de que está viviéndolo aquí en Bell Gardens o en el sureste de Los Ángeles, pero también, de otras perspectivas. Porque a lo mejor, aunque ellos no han lo vivido en persona, a lo mejor pasaron su familiar pasó por algo o tienen una conexión directamente a donde está pasando. So, anyways, I don't know if we can switch back in English to Spanish. El comentario a lo mejor dice, hey,
I know how.
I didn't mean it literally.
For the sake of the question, but based on this conversation, and you've proven yourself to be both an elected official and somebody who's visibly engaged in activism. Like, in this experience that you've done, have you been told to step back or kind of like refrain from saying certain things? And how do you balance that out?
Honestly, I happen to be in a position where I really enjoy what I do. I love what I do. I'm glad to be in a position where my morals and my values align with my day-to-day role, right? Not only in being in council, but working where I work at. So, in terms of that, there's never been an issue such as, right? Before this, I used to organize with the fast food workers. I did that for about almost 3 years. And I was directly going up against corporations like McDonald's and Jack in the Box who have multi-million, billion dollars and, who are worldwide known names. And, I was fighting for workers for them to get a bare minimum, right? And one of the biggest victories that we got when I was there was the $20 an hour, right? Statewide, you go to any McDonald's, Jack in the Box, Domino's Pizza, you name it, any of the fast food places, and all fast food workers are now making $20 an hour, right?
Yes.
Out of the sectors here in California, fast food has a mandate, a minimum of $20 an hour, and then healthcare workers have a minimum of $25 an hour. And then just this last week, minimum wage went up to $16.90, the highest in the nation, right? And it's crazy to think that in 2026 there are still people earning $7.25.
Dude, for real?
Yeah.
Is like the federal wage?
Yeah.
No, come on.
It is crazy to think that folks are living under, with less than $8 an hour. It's just crazy. It's outrageous. I don't know how folks do that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's extreme, man. And honestly, it's hard because, we're seeing everything go up and the wages are staying stagnant for the most part.
Yeah. It's crazy. I don't, housing and everything is really expensive. Housing, you go to the grocery store, you buy 4, 5, 6 different items. It's like, shoot, at this point, I'm just going to start growing my produce in my own backyard because everything is just, it's freaking expensive.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest movements I've seen kind of like, increase in the momentum is just mutual aid, and I know that word's been kind of thrown around like for everything nowadays, but just the fact that people are taking it upon themselves to show up for themselves and help each other out, And again, just going back to what I've seen over the last year, it's just people coming together, for example, like Southeast LA, again, I've been there since 98. So about almost like a little less than 30 years, But not once until last year did I see the community really come out and just be with each other, dude. Like that was so beautiful, just everybody out. Like you get to see your community, and that's really rare because you're driving on your car all the time. There's rarely any foot traffic or people,
You'd be surprised,
connecting.
bro. Yeah, no. But you go to Eastern and Florence throughout the week, beginning from like 7 in the morning till 6, 7 in the afternoon, man. And that bus stop's always packed.
Yeah.
There's people always there. And if you don't got folks waiting for the bus, you got street vendors selling flowers. That's our prime downtown right there of Bell Gardens. Yeah.
Exactly.
Eastern and Florence.
Again, it's just beautiful seeing the people come out and actually, although they're coming out because of a horrible, disgusting, vile thing happening to our communities, they're coming out to join each other, and through that they're celebrating their community. And again, I saw that in Bell, very, very like various different spots, and it just allowed me to just really get a sense of what my community could do. And I think that was powerful and eye-opening for me.
Yeah, man, that was one of the highlights, just being in the city side, right? Being an elected, because a lot of times when you're in the elected capacity, we don't necessarily have, the community isn't too, how do I say, fond of us, right? They think, oh, well, these folks, they don't understand, or maybe they're, the chair got to them and there's something else, right? And I think for us as a council, one of the biggest priorities for me, and I was mayor at the time, was we got to go down there, right? So I remember when the message started, I got text messages saying, hey, is this happening? Is this really going on? I said, yeah, I'm going to be there. We're going to be there. I have a bullhorn myself, right? Because that's what I do. I'm an organizer, and being out there with my own community, chanting the same chants I use when I'm out organizing. It was one of those highlights, and to your point, it was like the reason why we were out there. It really isn't, but it wasn't. It was a wrong. It's the wrong thing to be out there for in the sense, right? And pero it was so beautiful and it's so peaceful. Like everybody was. I mean, I'd tell you what was going on in LA, and everybody's saying like, oh, we don't want that to happen here in BG. We don't want that to happen in Bell or in HP or in Maywood. And I'll tell you, in our city, none of that. And I think a big part of it was because of the council being out there with the community. I remember we had at one point all of the corners blocked off, and it's a really heavy traffic corner because you got the 710 Florence exit. So consistently, folks are coming in and out. And we were there. The person who started it, her name is Katia. I think it's Katia or Karemi. It started with a K. I'm pretty sure it was Katia. And we were out there, and she started getting the word out. It was just herself, and then her brother came, and then we went all the way till like 10 at night, 9:30, 10 o'clock. Obviously, safety is our number one priority, right? Last thing I want is for someone to get hurt or just we've obviously want to take precautions. And the last thing I want is también like one of us are there, right? Being the sort of responsible for the city, and this happens. And they're going to say, wait, wasn't the mayor there too? Like, the hell so for me, it's about having safety. So all of us on council said, okay, we're all going to be out there. But at the same time, we want to make sure that there's, police in case anything dangerous happens, or EMT can be out there right away to respond. So I made sure that I talked to our chief. I talked to our officers, and I said, look, you guys are more than welcome to be in this space, but I need you guys to give us distance, right? Stay back. Don't be there in the front. You can certainly walk, take a stroll every other time, right? But we're going to be out there. Yeah. This is our time for us as a community to come out, and I'm going to assure that everything is respectful and peaceful. It was myself. The vice mayor was there. It was done for 2 to 3 days. All of the council came out, and we had it was peaceful. And, once like 9 o'clock, 9:30 hit, remember we were doing chants. I get on the bullhorn and I tell folks, look, folks, we've been doing this since 1 o'clock. I gave the person a shout out, the one who started Katia. And I said, look, we want to do this again tomorrow, right? Let's start calming down and we'll call it a day. And I'll tell you, everybody for the most part was productive, and they all kind of went home. They dispersed within like the next 20 minutes. Nice. Peaceful. Yeah. Right. And I think a big part of it, why it was peaceful, was because we were out there, right? We were out there and the folks wanted to see that. I remember, on TikTok, folks were sending me TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but folks were sending me TikToks and saying, oh my God, Jorgel, I see you here. And my mom's freaking out too because my tia's selling her the stuff too. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but they're like, no, it's like you're on the, and I was wearing my bullhorn, and I'm wearing a tie, and I'm still, trying to still carry the bullhorn too. And it was just what an experience.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's something that, people who are looking at this from the outside to understand is that a lot of the times, a lot of these gatherings or these protests, they are peaceful, and it really is until you have a third party coming in here and to instigating things, right? That it escalates into something completely different from what it started. And when I was on filming that night for one of the Bell Garden protests, I did see some of the police officers just walking around, kind of just being with the community. Now, I'm not the biggest advocate for police, certain issues on my own, but just the fact that they were there and not engaging in any way to kind of stop what was going on, I felt like that, in a sense, was a moment of solidarity with the community. You know? So definitely have to keep props where I have to, and that was one of those moments where I was like, "Damn, that's respect for that."
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the things that happened to me when I was there, there was an individual who clearly had, they were on something, or they maybe had some like mental health issues, and they grabbed me for my jacket, and they pulled me close, and they were gonna I get to an extent, I got assaulted. My colleague was there, Frances, and she saw it and she witnessed it. And then other members of the community right away jumped in to sort of, to support me in this. But right away, I told him, once he saw the community came out, he took a step back and he, sort of freaked out, and he jolted and then he walked away. But it was, this is sort of it was just happened. I happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And then I'll tell you, that person was then left, and then within like 3 hours, came back, apologized to me.
Damn.
Right. Yeah. And it was like a real, like, okay, I didn't, because we were there all night up until like 10 o'clock. So again, just, it's just an experience. And it was like a family friendly environment too. We had families come out. They said, I found out about this on Facebook. At the same time, Downey was... I never would have thought I would see something like this in Downey.
Oh, Downey did.
Downey did something right there in front of the
embassy.
The embassy, yeah, because they were staying there too, right? So it was just... it was overall an experience, man, and you know, just full of solidarity, and you know, it was good.
Yeah, you know, and honestly, you know, I've thought about it, like, what will it take for us to be able to create or basically recreate that energy, but outside of the things that led up to that protest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure if we figure out a way, you know, to get people out there more often, I think that eventually becomes a community thing. Like, you know, you start seeing and people start noticing, and then you start meeting people and the people who live around you. And I think that's key.
Yeah, man. You got to find the cause. You got to find the root. I don't want to say let's all unite when something bad is happening to all of us, right? But, you know, we can find a common thing or a common issue we really care about, and we can advocate for it, right? We can really and what I always argue with, like, on my organizing, on my activism side, right? Because I'm obviously on the governing side, is just the same way we're out protesting, just the same way we're out marching, just the same way we're out, you know, organizing and making noise. I want to see that same energy and that same long line onto the voting polls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We need that line to the voting polls, and I'm going to do everything in my power to assure that we have enough voting polls, that it doesn't take 2-3 hours to go and vote, right? That we have voting by mail accessible, etc. So I want that same energy to be led up into the elections, right? Because, and I get it, and some folks are they don't like the system. They don't like the folks that are in power. They say all the folks aren't the same. And I mean, we saw what happened in New York, right? I always look at that, and I saw his whole inauguration speech, and you know, advocating for common sense issues, right? Like, I'm thinking about, like, free transit for all, right? I'm thinking, like, free childcare, like that's just, for me, it's pretty straightforward. And I won't go to the extent of saying, like, freeze the rent, but, like, in my case, we passed the strongest rent stabilization and just cause evictions across the state of California. Right. And where we've created a system in our city that if at any point a landlord wants to raise the rent to a tenant, they have to go to the city to first ask for permission if it's legal.
What? That's awesome.
We created a rental registry in the city of Bell Gardens. And to this point, we're about 80% of all the units within the city, the 6,000 plus units that are already registered with the city. Right. And I mean, that was my biggest accomplishment within my first term of the city council. Right. And it was during COVID, where people were getting their rents increased from one day to the next, $300, $400. And, you know, it was definitely, you know, I look back at that, and, you know, at the time I was 25, I think, at that time. Now I'm going to 29. So, I mean, I'm feeling it, man. It's just, and then I see the other folks that are just coming onto the council, you know, my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Guillen, and the mayor, Miguel de la Rosa. And, you know, I just continually hope that we continue to head in the same trajectory, man. And we're all young. I look at my other colleagues, Francis and Marco, who have a little bit more of the experience, and both and professionally, and we have a good balance, a good team. Yeah. Right. Let's continue to unite folks. Let's continue being representatives of us. And don't get me wrong, we have disagreements here or there, right? But I always say, like, hey, amongst us, you know, we don't want to be another story of, oh, here we go again, Sela up at it again, right?
Right.
Because we're trying to change that narrative, right? We're better than that. And I think that's been a big priority. At least when I was mayor, that was a big priority. I wanted to make one point about, you know, the line with people voting, and, you know, because some folks are saying, well, you know, what, my vote's not going to count. You know? Right. They'll make that argument, or the system's all screwed up. What I would say is, you know, I'll tell them, like, you take a stab at the system. Right, you take a stab, and you yourself run to be in this position, right? And we've seen folks who have came up from the organizing and the activism side, and I'll tell them, like, I challenge you to get in this position, and you do this, and that's the beauty of this, that you can run for it, right? And you know, it's not being on the campaign trail and having your beliefs is very different than from when you're actually within the system, right? Because then you gotta, like, for example, in the city council where I'm at, oh damn, it's only me. I gotta work with 4 other people now. And all of us are the same. We all have the same voting power. None of us can overthrow each other. We don't have veto power. The mayor is a symbolic mayor. They run the meetings. They are the official representative of the city, and that's it to the extent that the mayor has. But they can't. You know, that's, for me. I always put it back on the community. I encourage you to run, right? And it's every 2 years, and 2 years go by like really quick.
Damn. So, I mean, just for those people who've thought about it or so, like, what kind of advice would you give somebody?
Like if they're interested in running, I'd say, make sure you run. You don't need a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. Folks always say, oh, you need to have a lot of money, or you need to be very popular. You need to, it's like I did it with $6,000. It was during COVID too. Right. And I knocked on every door I could, especially within our small cities. It's a lot easier. Right. You have a city like, I'm thinking like, I'll just name all the Sela cities: Huntington Park, Bell, Maywood, Cudahy, Bell Gardens, Commerce, Linwood, Southgate. All of our cities are under 100,000 in population. Right. Give or take. In my city, for example, we have about 61 streets, right? Total residential streets. You create a plan. You should do a 3-month campaign. You knock on every door you can. Excuse me. Nothing's going to be more impactful to a voter than yourself as a candidate going directly and telling them like, hey, my name is Jorgel. I'm your candidate, or I'm running for city council. Can I count on your vote? Right? You do your pitch, whatever the pitch you want to run in, right? If you care a lot about biking, you run on bike lanes. Right, you run on making the parks better. You run on building a pool, right? Because that was a big one in our city. You run on rent stabilization, right? Because freaking rents are way too expensive. You name it, whatever the pitch or whatever the idea you want to run on, you create a good sense of what you want to do when you get in. Because you're not, even if you have all the answers or you already kind of put a concept or a play, it's going to change once you get in. Yeah. Right. Because you're going to realize, oh, wow, the plan that I had for 6 months became just 2 years, right? Because then you got to create a committee. Then you got to talk to staff. Then, it's a long plan, and you just have to be patient. And it's okay to learn, man, because it's taken me a while to get to this point where, okay, now, and when we talk about what are other cities doing about this whole federal oversight and can ICE just come in and do all of this? Like all of our cities are sort of on edge. We don't know what's going to come out of the Perdomo case, right? For example, our city in that case is claiming damages. We're saying that, the federal government owes us for police response time, right? Because now my officers have to go and respond to doing, when they were out there in the protest, the overtime. Yeah. When people in our community call me or text me, or when I've confronted ICE myself, I had to get officers to be there present, right? So they're going to be taken from wherever they're going to be doing. During the ICE raid, when they began, we started doing deliveries of meals and, essentials for the babies and stuff directly to the door, right? So that shifted programming. Our 4th of July event, we had to cancel that event, right? What happened to, if we had things booked and ready to go and some deposits we can't get back, et cetera, like that's all money that is owed now. Now I wouldn't say to the city, but to the people of Bell Gardens. Yeah. Right. So we're suing the federal government saying that, hey, we're owed this much, our casino, our card room, that is our jewel within the city. It provides close to 50% of our budget. Right. That's taking a toll on this population going to the card room to playing games. Right. And playing cards and stuff. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on. Lavanderias, the panaderia, our supermarkets, so our businesses, our restaurants, people aren't going out to eat. Yeah, because they're hits. Exactly. Yeah. So, we can shift it however we can, and it's my responsibility to ensure that we can, whenever this is all, hopefully, whatever comes out of it, that Bell Gardens and the people are going to be taken care of. Yeah. Yeah.
And just one last question before we start wrapping this up, or two, actually.
Take your time. I got time. I'm enjoying this. I'm
glad, man. Yeah. My question is there a world where, this is narrowed down to Southeast LA, where there's a way to kind of build up a coalition? Like, is there a feature that we can see in that?
I think, to put it like as in like the city governments itself, I think there's too much bureaucracy. There's too much tape put in place. There was this professional, I forgot his name, but he was a really smart dude. He came out of Southgate, and he did like urban studies. Yeah. And one of the things he told me was he did like economic development and community development and zoning and housing and stuff. And he was telling me, has Sela ever thought about just getting rid of the city borders and just creating one big city? Yeah. Right? Like, there is no Southgate or Linwood. There is no, like, you could create but you could call yourself like Sela. Like that's a city. Like, get rid of the names, right? Because our community don't necessarily understand Sela as, oh, I'm from Bell, or I'm from Bell Gardens, or I'm from Maywood, or I'm from Cudahy. We just crossed the train tracks and we're in a whole, we're in Cudahy, or we cross our, in the case, you cross the river and you're in Bell Gardens, right? So, what have we ever thought about and he was shaping it from like a perspective of like marketing or like a Costco, right?
Mm-hmm.
He said, like, what if a Costco wants to open, or like the Sam's Club that's in Southgate? The market that Southgate is going to bring is not going to be only for Southgate. The market's going to be for Bell Gardens. It's going to be for Bell. It's going to be for Cudahy. The market, when they're looking at investments, the people are going to come from all those cities. They're not just looking at Southgate.
Yeah.
So have you guys ever thought about just like the Sellout Cultural Center is a perfect example. It's not just going to be for Southgate because it's going to be in their backyard, but, it's really going to be there for Sela. But have you guys ever thought about just getting rid of the borders and creating one big city, right? I can think it's going to take a lot of organizing. We're talking decades, if anything. And even then, I feel like there's too much pride within each city to just kind of break off and then become one. Right?
Yeah, right.
I think that there are issues that we can all get behind. I think that we can certainly all get united on fronts, and it'll take some coordination to ensure that all of us can kind of chip into whatever the cause is. But I think that there is enough, aside from us having pride for me saying like, oh, I'm from Bell Gardens and that's me. Like, I also take pride in being from Southeast Los Angeles and repping Sela all day, every day. So, I mean, we'll see. But I just hope that we can continually get united behind these like issues. I think that's going to be key.
Yeah,
get behind issues.
Yeah, no, man. I appreciate, honestly, this conversation. Like, it really answered a lot of questions that I have just from the perspective, again, as a community member, and just to kind of just understand, from somebody in your position and what that looks like, right? Because we all have our sense of what has been happening, but it helps to get clearer answers or different perspectives because it's going to lessen the fear that a lot of us are going through, right? Mm-hmm. And I think once we're able to get our hands or control on those emotions, it's easier for us to focus and figure out exactly how we should be moving towards more, progress, basically.
Yeah, look, I would say let's consistently keep this attitude going. Let's continually be positive. There's nothing better than seeing our communities of Sela being and heading in the right direction, right? Again, right now is a great opportunity for us to continually activate our base, activate our, usually we say like we have to activate our membership, right? Our members that are active within the cause. But in this case, we got to continually activate our community, and let's not just be the backyard of the county anymore, right? Let's change the narrative and let's make sure that, we have the best food across the county. I'll take pride every day. I live half a block away from Rocio's Mexican Kitchen, and I'll give them a shout out because they're the 2-time Michelin stars within Sela. They're the only Michelin restaurant. But I'll give props to Bell, which I know is your hood, and I know they got La Casita Mexicana. So I'll give them two, right? And we each got HP got La Pacific, Linwood got La Plaza Mexico, Southgate, right, got the Azalea Plaza, right?
Azalea Plaza.
Yeah, that's huge. I think they had La First Terramia too in Sela, right? Because I know Linwood also has one. So we all have our own, I'll give Cudahy a shout out too because I know they're gonna kill me if I don't. I know they got Chris's Hamburgers, right? Yeah. And then I'm trying to think Maywood. What does the Maywood got?
Maywood, I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there. Taco Boy has some good stuff right there.
Hey, Taco Boy?
El Indio Azteca too, some bomb-ass nachos.
There it is. So, yeah, I mean, I think again, Southeast LA is where it's at. Let's continually hold, elected officials in our positions accountable. Never forget, we work for the community. We work for you. You gave us this position. You could get rid of us, right? If you don't like something, if you're like, you know what, this council, if you tell me, Jorgel, ya me cansaste, I don't want to hear from you. I don't like you. I don't like what you did here, right? Totally understandable. But let's continually just heading the right direction. Let's continue to be positive. And I encourage other folks to run too, right? We need more folks in these positions, right? We have so much potential and so much opportunity here. And it's just right now to your point, we're like sort of in synchrony with everybody and let's continue to keep on getting these flows and yep.
Hell yeah. Jorgel, thank you so much for making the time to come out on the show. For anybody who's interested in following you or finding out more information about you, where can people get in contact with you?
Just my name, man. Jorgel Chavez D. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on X. Actually, I don't even use X. I think I posted like back in 22. when I had just gotten elected. I don't know why. I don't know if people just in Sela don't use that. But yeah, you can find me there. And then if folks ever want to reach out to me directly, you guys could always text me or call me directly to 323-305-4567.
Hey, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. You're listening to The Social Primate. We'll see you guys next week.